Hello and welcome to Organic Edible Garden. It's been a really cool start to the season, but now the soil temperature is warming up and it's time to plant our heat-loving plants. These include things like our eggplants and our peppers and our chilies. We're also going to plant things like our edamame and our okra, which just love to be baked in the sun. Our tomatoes need delateraling, and we're going to feed them with our liquid fertilizer we made a few weeks ago. And then we're going to do our final hill up of our potatoes, which are doing really well. I'm going to plant both types of eggplants, the Asian type and the European type, because I'm using them differently in different recipes. And this year I'm going to plant paprika for the first time. I want to make my own paprika and I'll see how it goes. And even if I don't use them for drying, they're still really good for eating fresh. I'm also planting two types of peppers. The big blocky round peppers are thick-walled and are really crunchy. And also the Makoni reds, which are bullhorn type. They're thinner skin, but they're more prolific, and they're ready about 2 or 3 weeks before the others. And finally the okra, or ladyfingers. I'm going to plant these plants probably about 1/2 metre apart. They like a bit of room to spread and some air movement as well. The thing about eggplants and peppers, they need a really good rich soil. I've enriched this with a lot of compost, and what I'm going to do after I've planted the plants, I'll put things like gypsum around because they need the calcium, and some cheap sheep pellets or chicken poo. People often find things like your eggplants and chilies don't give you a lot for a plant, but it's what you put into the soil makes a difference. If you give it a really rich soil, you'll get a bumper crop out of it. With chili plants, probably 1 or 2 is enough. People put in a lot of chilies because they say they're chili friends, but you get hundreds of chilies just from 2 plants. Even digging this deep down in the soil, it's still pretty warm, so these guys are going to do really well. Now, with the edamame, they're like dwarf beans. They only grow about sort of 30 or 40 centimetres high, and they're pretty much self-supporting. And being nitrogen fixers like all beans, we can plant them pretty close together. And finally the okra. I'm going to give these a bit of space because they get slightly larger than edamame. Now we put on our soil additives. We want these guys to grow really strong and give us a lot of fruit, so we're going to add a nitrogen source. In this case, it's got to be chicken manure. And the good thing about this stuff is it's full of carbon as well from the shavings, which is what the soil really needs. We're also going to add a calcium source, and in this case it's going to be gypsum rather than lime, because all of this family likes slightly acidic soils and we don't want to adjust that. The calcium not only makes the cells strong on the plant, but will prevent things like blossom end rots, which is often when you've got a pepper and it starts rotting from one of the sides. This will cure that. We're going to add some rock dust, and this is just to make them nutrient dense and make them really healthy plants. And also around our solanums, we're going to add some neem granules. Not only is this a really good soil conditioner, but if we do have a thing with psyllids, this will keep them away. With a high nitrogen fertilizer like this, it's important we don't leave it on the leaves or around the stems, so we can just spread it out. We just take it off the leaves by shaking them. And finally we're going to water it. Not only is the soil a bit dry at the moment, but I'm going to wash all the manures off the leaves of the plants. And once it's had a good watering, we'll put a net over it until the plants are established. If you live in areas that don't have a strong sea influence and you're still getting great variance between the day and night temperatures, I recommend putting rocks around your eggplants and peppers. What this does is it heats the rocks up during the day, and during the night it releases that warmth back into the plant. You can use any type of rock, including things like bits of concrete we've got here. I don't recommend using bricks because they've got a lot of holes in it and it just harbours things like slugs or other insects. If you haven't got things like rocks, just filling up old milk bottles or Coke bottles around them, that'll do the same job. At this time of year, it's probably not necessary for us to use the rocks around all our solanums because our day and night temperatures are now becoming more even. We want to give our tomatoes a bit of attention. They're doing really well, but it's time to delateral them before they get too big. It's really important before you start delateraling to make sure you do it on the right day. You need clear blue sky and a good breeze, and today's perfect. I usually start at the bottom of the plant and I take off the lower leaves first. I find by lifting them up and then pushing them down, they break off quite easily. Now on a plant like this, I want about 2 or 3 laterals only, but I don't want them to start off at the base, so I'll take these bottom ones off. So new laterals will come out the side of a branch, and we'll keep taking those off as it grows. Even when they're about this size, it's really good to pull them off. The smaller the wound, the less chance of infection. We delateral, especially in humid areas like this, one, because we just don't want it to go all over the place. But more importantly, air movement can come through. The sunlight can ripen up the tomatoes and we'll have less humidity issues. If you want to know more about delateraling, you can just go into our website, go to the search engine and type in tomato, and you'll see a whole video on delateraling tomatoes. The next thing we're going to do is feed our tomatoes with some of the liquid feed we made about 2 weeks ago. This is rotted down really well, it just needs a good stir. If you're making this at home, it smells really bad, so just don't be shocked. So I'm just going to pour some into a watering can. If you do get the stuff on your hands and it stinks, the best thing to do is just get a teaspoon or a tablespoon and just rub it on the hands. It's the only way to get rid of that smell. The first thing we're going to do though is water the tomatoes. Even though this has been diluted, we don't want to risk it burning the roots, so whenever you put a liquid fertiliser on, always water the soil first. Because it's a really chunky liquid, we'll take off the rows and we'll just put it straight through the nozzle. When watering the plant, it doesn't really matter if it goes over the leaves. It's only going to feed through them as well. The potatoes have gone bananas and they're huge now. I have been hilling them up, but I've come to a point where now they're just so high. I'm getting my first flowers on the potatoes, which is great, which means it's producing the fruit. And we really want the potatoes eventually to die down before we harvest them, but I can never wait for that. So I'll start bandicooting them, which means you put your hands in the soil and taking out the potatoes before they're ready. And I'll probably start doing that in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, I'm going to put a bit more soil in it. This has got a lot of carbon in, and not only will it help hill it up, but it's going to put the carbon back into the soil and keep it cool underneath, which is what potatoes like.